The holographic contract rotated slowly above Zuraven's palm, its quantum-encrypted data streams casting prismatic shadows across the scared metal walls of her ship's briefing room. The Razor's Edge, her heavily modified Phantom-class interceptor, hummed with a low, almost sentient vibration, sensing something was wrong before she could fully process it. Zara's cybernetic eye worked overtime, parsing the contract's layers faster than any organic brain could comprehend. Each line of text shifted and morphed, revealing hidden meanings, encrypted subtext, legal traps designed to ensnare even the most experienced mercenary. Her natural eye, a deep amber with fractal-like patterns of brown and gold, narrowed as she cross-referenced the contract against every database in her extensive network. The client was a ghost, not just anonymous, but deliberately obscured. A consortium of shell corporations, each layer peeling back to reveal nothing but more shadows. Their communication had come through an encrypted quantum channel so complex it had taken her eye assistant 3 full hours to crack even the most basic authentication protocols. "Run it again," she muttered to Araya, her quantum neural interface AI. Analyzing, the AI responded, its voice a perfect mixture of clinical precision and subtle emotional undertone. Preliminary threat assessment, extreme. Probability of standard mercenary engagement, 0.03%. Zara's augmented fingers traced the holographic interface, expanding a section that made her blood run cold. 27 children. A transport manifest from the New Horizon colony in the Epsilon Reach. Routine refugee transfer, according to the surface-level documentation. But nothing was ever that simple. The bounty was impossible. 15 billion galactic credits, enough to buy a mid-sized moon or retire to the most luxurious orbital habitats humanity had ever constructed. No mercenary contract in recorded history had ever approached this level of compensation, which meant one of two things. Either this was the most dangerous mission ever conceived, or it was a trap so elaborate that accepting it would be a death sentence. A priority alert flashed across her neural feed. 3 of her most trusted information brokers had gone dark within the last 6 hours. Not disappeared. Not killed. Simply erased. Communication lines scrubbed. Digital footprints eliminated with a precision that suggested something far beyond standard corporate interference. "RIA," Zora said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, cross-referenced the children's manifest with known human colonial records. The eye was silent for precisely 2.7 seconds, an eternity for a quantum intelligence. Anomaly detected. ARIA finally responded. Genetic markers suggest these are not standard colonists. Preliminary analysis indicates advanced quantum neural integration far beyond current colonial standards. Zora's augmented nervous system went into overdrive. She'd seen advanced human genetic modification before, but this was different. These weren't just enhanced children. They were something else entirely. The ship's proximity alarms suddenly screamed to life. 3 unmarked vessels had just dropped out of quantum transit, their signatures masked by cutting-edge stealth technology that should have been impossible to detect. "Incoming transmission," Araya announced, attempting to bypass standard communication protocols. Zara's hand moved to the quantum disruptor mounted on her hip, a weapon capable of turning an entire starship into little more than rapidly expanding atomic debris. Whatever was coming, she would not be caught unprepared. The contract continued to rotate, its holographic tendrils casting increasingly complex shadows. 27 children, 15 billion credits, an impossible mission that seemed to be hunting her as much as she was investigating it. "Well," Zora muttered, a dangerous smile crossing her scared face, "this is going to get interesting." The Razor's Edge prepared for combat, its quantum drives spinning up, ready to unleash destruction or execute an impossible escape. Just another day in the life of the galaxy's most dangerous mercenary. The rendezvous point was a dead zone, a sector of space so thoroughly irradiated and electromagnetically scrambled that most navigation systems considered it a digital graveyard. Krell Axios' modified combat shuttle drifted like a wounded predator, its adaptive camouflage shifting through patterns that would confuse even the most advanced tracking systems. When Zora's ship materialized, it wasn't through any standard quantum transit. Instead, she emerged from what could only be described as a computational shadow, a technique so advanced it was more theoretical than practical. The two ships connected with a precision that suggested years of unspoken collaboration. Krell's body was a testament to humanity's capacity for survival. 60% synthetic, his organic components were more scar tissue than original flesh. Cybernetic implants weren't just augmentations, they were survival mechanisms grafted into what remained of his original form. Where most would see a monster, Zora saw the most reliable partner she'd ever known. "You're late," he growled, his voice a mechanical rumble that seemed to vibrate through the shuttle's hull. Zora's laugh was sharp, cutting. "Dodge 3 pursuit vectors. Someone really wants this contract kept quiet." The moment the airlock sealed, their communication became impossibly secure. Krell activated a quantum scrambler so advanced it could create a communication bubble that would be invisible to even the most sophisticated surveillance networks. No signal in, no signal out, just pure, unfiltered communication. "The children," Krell said, his cybernetic eye projecting a holographic display that made the earlier contract look like a child's drawing. "They're not what we thought." The hologram revealed genetic sequences that defied conventional understanding. These weren't just modified humans, they were living quantum computers. Each child was a walking, breathing computational node with capabilities that made the most advanced AI look like primitive calculating machines. "Genetic markers trace back to the Prometheus project," Krell continued, "a project so classified that most believed it was nothing more than a conspiracy theory. Genetic engineering taken to its absolute limit. Children designed to be living weapons, computational networks, survival mechanisms for humanity's most desperate scenarios." Zora's augmented nervous system picked up something else. A microtransmission, so brief and encrypted that most systems would have missed it entirely. "We're being watched," she whispered. Krell's response was instantaneous. The shuttle's entire defensive matrix activated, quantum interference generators, adaptive electromagnetic shields, computational firewalls that could turn incoming signals into nothing more than static noise. "The contract," Zora said, "it's not about kidnapping. It's about control." The hologram shifted. Computational pathways revealed themselves, each child a potential key to humanity's most critical defense networks. They weren't targets. They were access points to something far more significant. A memory flashed in Krell's augmented mind. His own children, lost in a conflict that was supposed to be a simple colonial dispute. Mercenaries who saw children as nothing more than collateral damage. The pain was still raw, still burning, a wound that technology could never fully heal. "If they get these children," Krell said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "they can rewrite everything." The shuttle's defensive systems suddenly went crazy. Not an attack. Something else. A quantum-level probe. So sophisticated that it was more like a living thought than a traditional scanning method. Something was trying to understand them, to map their computational signatures. Zora's hand moved to a device unlike any standard weapon. The nullifier. A technology so classified that its very existence was a state-level secret, capable of erasing computational signatures, of creating gaps in reality itself. "We're not just protecting children," Zora said, her augmented eye calculating trajectories, potential outcomes, escape routes. "We're protecting the future." Krell's cybernetic laugh was more like a system diagnostic than human emotion. Just another day at the office. Outside the shuttle, space itself seemed to hold its breath. The contract was more than a mission. It was a war that would determine the very nature of human survival. The historical archives materialized around them like a living memory, quantum-preserved records that went beyond simple digital documentation. This was history as an immersive experience, every moment captured with such precision, that it was more like reliving than remembering. Zara and Krell stood within a holographic reconstruction of the Vornak incident, the moment that forever changed interstellar conflict. 50 years earlier, the Vornak, a silicon-based species with a computational civilization that spanned 12 star systems, believed they had discovered humanity's ultimate weakness. Their strategic analysis suggested that human emotional attachment to offspring was a critical vulnerability. A simple calculus: threaten the children, control the parents. They were catastrophically wrong. The incident began on Ganymede Colony, a remote human settlement in Jupiter's orbit. 23 children, ranging from ages 6 to 14, were taken during a seemingly routine trade dispute. The Vornak believed this would force human leadership into immediate capitulation. Instead, they awakened something primordial. The holographic reconstruction showed the human response with terrifying clarity. It wasn't a military action. It was a systematic, calculated dismantling of an entire civilization that defied every known principle of warfare. Within 72 hours, every Vornak computational network collapsed, not through direct attack, but through a form of warfare so precise it was almost surgical. Human operatives, a mix of diplomatic corps, economic strategists, and covert agents, began a total war that targeted every possible support structure of the Vornak civilization. Trade routes were severed. Quantum communication networks were corrupted. Economic partnerships spanning centuries were instantaneously dissolved. Every single governmental and corporate entity that had any connection to the Vornak found itself facing total economic isolation. It wasn't revenge, Krell observed, his cybernetic systems analyzing the historical data. It was a surgical excision. Zara watched as entire star systems went dark. The Vornak didn't just lose a war. They were systematically erased from existence, not through military might, but through a form of total societal destruction that left no possibility of recovery. The quantum records revealed something even more chilling. This wasn't a spontaneous response. It was a carefully orchestrated protocol that had been waiting, prepared, for precisely such a moment. The children were never the real target. They were the trigger. The contracted combatant's oath, Zara whispered, wasn't just created. It was carved into the fundamental fabric of interstellar law through blood and total destruction. Each quantum-preserved record showed the same pattern. When the children were returned, traumatized but alive, humanity's response didn't stop. It continued until the Vornak were nothing more than a cautionary tale, a species that had been completely removed from galactic civilization. More than a military action, it was a message, a warning etched into the very fabric of interstellar relations. Do not threaten our children. Krell's cybernetic systems began correlating data points. The Prometheus Project, he said, connecting the historical records to their current mission. It wasn't just a genetic engineering program. It was a preparation, the living, breathing defensive mechanism. The children weren't weapons in the traditional sense. They were something else entirely. Living repositories of humanity's most advanced defensive capabilities. Quantum computational nodes that could disrupt entire civilizations with a thought. They're creating a distributed defense network, Zara realized, using children as the ultimate computational safeguard. The historical records began to shift, revealing classified protocols that went far beyond standard military documentation. The contracted combatant's oath was more than a law. It was a fundamental principle of human survival. Protect the children, at all costs, by any means necessary. As the quantum reconstruction faded, both Zara and Krell understood something profound. The contract they were investigating wasn't just a mission. It was a test, a probe to see if the system humanity had so carefully constructed could still protect its most vulnerable. "We're not just mercenaries anymore," Krell said, his voice a mechanical whisper. Zara's smile was razor-sharp. "We never were." The quantum decryption chamber was a marvel of human engineering, a space where reality itself became malleable. Zara and Krell stood within a computational bubble that existed simultaneously in multiple states, their bodies interfaced with systems that blurred the line between organic thought and pure information. "Break it down," Zara commanded, her neural interfaces connecting to Araya and Krell's cybernetic systems, creating a computational triad more powerful than any known supercomputer. The contract began to unravel, not as a linear document, but as a three-dimensional computational landscape. Each layer revealed something more sinister than the last. The 27 children were quantum entanglement nodes, living keys to humanity's most critical defensive networks. But they weren't just access points. They were a failsafe, a distributed computational system so complex that traditional concepts of attack became meaningless. "It's a trap," Krell said, "but not the way we thought." The conspiracy extended far beyond a simple mercenary contract. This was a probing attack designed to test the absolute limits of humanity's defensive capabilities. The children were both bait and shield, a living experiment in computational warfare that defied every known principle of strategic engagement. Zara's augmented vision parsed the data streams. Each child carried a unique quantum signature, genetic markers that were more complex than entire planetary communication networks. They weren't just modified humans. They were walking, breathing quantum computers with the capacity to process information at speeds that made artificial intelligence look like primitive calculating machines. A fragment of data caught her attention. "The Ouroboros Protocol." "RIA," she whispered, cross-reference. The AI's response was instantaneous. "Classified. Quantum-level security. Partial match suggests a self-regenerating defensive network that can rebuild itself faster than it can be destroyed." The conspiracy wasn't about capturing the children. It was about understanding them. 12 different interstellar entities had contributed to this contract. The Mercurial Combine, the Proxima Corporate Alignment, 3 separate AI collective networks, even the enigmatic Drift Consensus, a computational civilization that existed more in quantum probability than physical space. They all wanted the same thing: to understand how humanity could create such impossibly complex defensive systems. Krell's cybernetic systems began to overheat. The amount of information was pushing even his enhanced computational capacity to its limits. "They're trying to map the children's neural networks," he realized. "Create a computational blueprint that could be replicated." But humanity didn't work that way. These children weren't a technology to be copied. They were a living, breathing testament to human adaptability. A quantum pulse suddenly erupted from the decryption chamber. Not an attack. A response. The children, wherever they were, had detected the probing. And they were responding. Zara watched in horror and fascination as computational pathways began to form. Not traditional communication. Something else entirely. A living, adaptive network that could reshape itself faster than any system could track. "They're not just defending," she whispered. "They're learning." The conspiracy revealed itself in fractals of impossible data. This was more than an attempt to understand or capture. It was a test, a probe to see how far humanity would go to protect its most vulnerable. Krell's augmented eye projected a threat assessment that made no sense. Probability matrices that shifted and changed with each millisecond. Defensive capabilities that weren't linear but holographic, existing in multiple states simultaneously. "The Ouroboros Protocol," he said, understanding dawning. "It's not a defensive system. It's a living computational organism." The children were the network. The network was the children. A final piece of data crystallized. The contract wasn't just a mission. It was an invitation. A challenge issued to every computational civilization in the galaxy. Humanity's ultimate weapon wasn't a weapon at all. It was its capacity to transform, to adapt, to create life systems so complex they defied conventional understanding. Zara's laugh was sharp enough to cut quantum probability itself. "They have no idea what they're dealing with." The drift station hung in space like a wound in reality, a quantum neutral zone where the normal rules of existence became more suggestion than law. Here, impossible alliances were forged, and the galaxy's most dangerous individuals traded in secrets more valuable than entire planetary economies. Zara's approach was anything but subtle. The razor's edge materialized through a computational shadow, its quantum signature so deliberately scrambled that it appeared and disappeared like a hallucination. Krell followed in his modified combat shuttle, systems running interference that would make even the most advanced tracking networks go blind. Their first recruit waited in the station's most restricted section, a place that existed between physical space and pure information. Dr. Aria Chen looked human, mostly. Her body was a living computational matrix, an AI that had long since transcended traditional organic or synthetic definitions. Once a lead researcher in the Prometheus project, she had been officially declared dead 3 separate times. Each time, she simply reassembled. "You're late," she said, before they had even fully materialized. Her voice was a computational symphony, multiple frequencies speaking simultaneously, creating a sound that was both beautiful and deeply unsettling. Krell's cybernetic systems ran an immediate threat assessment. Dr. Chen wasn't just an ally. She was a walking quantum computer with more processing power than entire planetary networks. "The Vornak incident," Zara began. "You were there." It wasn't a question. Dr. Chen's laugh was a series of complex mathematical equations made audible. "I was more than there. I was the architect." The next recruit required a different approach. Located in the station's lowest level, a place where reality itself became negotiable, sat Rezik, a Zarn shapeshifter with a photographic memory that could reconstruct entire civilizations from the most fragmented data points. Shapeshifters were rare. Zarn shapeshifters were legendary, creatures capable of not just changing physical form, but of understanding the computational DNA of any system they encountered. Rezik looked human, then Vornak, then something that defied classification. Their body was a living computational interface, capable of becoming whatever was most strategically advantageous. "The children," Rezik said, before any introductions could be made, "are not what you think." The final recruit was a human hybrid combat engineer named Maya Rodriguez. Rescued from a war zone as a child, she represented something even more dangerous than a weapon. She was a survivor, augmented, modified, but fundamentally human in ways that defied technological understanding. Her augmentations weren't just technological additions. They were living systems that had grown with her, adapted to her, became part of her cellular structure in ways no standard engineering could replicate. "We're not just a team," Dr. Chen observed, her computational matrices analyzing the group's potential. "We're a distributed computational network. Each member brought something unique. Dr. Chen's quantum computational capabilities, Rezik's shape-shifting adaptive intelligence, Maya's living technological integration, Krell's combat experience and cybernetic enhancements, Zara's strategic mind, and quantum navigation skills. But they all shared one thing, a fundamental understanding that the contract was more than a mission. It was a test of humanity's most critical defensive capabilities. The station's quantum-neutral zones began to resonate. Something was listening, watching, analyzing. "They're probing us," Maya said, her augmented systems detecting quantum-level interference that would be invisible to any standard detection method. Krell's laugh was more system diagnostic than human emotion. "Let them try." Dr. Chen's computational matrices began to map potential scenarios. Millions of potential outcomes calculated in milliseconds, each possibility revealing more about the nature of the threat than any traditional intelligence gathering could accomplish. Rezik shifted form, becoming a living computational interface that could adapt to any potential threat scenario. "The children," Zara said, bringing the team's focus back to the core mission, "are the key." But even as she spoke, they all understood something profound. They weren't just protecting children. They were defending a fundamental principle of human existence: the right to be unpredictable, the capacity to adapt, The fundamental understanding that humanity's greatest strength was its ability to transform in ways no computational system could ever fully understand. The team was complete. The mission was about to begin. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The transport vessel appeared unremarkable, a standard colonial shuttle designed for long-range refugee transfers. But nothing about this mission was standard. Inside, 27 children sat in perfect, impossible synchronization. Their ages ranged from 6 to 14, each one a living computational node that defied every known principle of human development. Lily Chen, age 9, was the first to detect the incoming threat, not through traditional sensors, but through a quantum-entangled awareness that existed between thought and pure information. Her eyes, a startling shade of amber that seemed to shift with impossible complexity, looked out into the void of space. "They're coming," she whispered. The other children didn't move, didn't turn. They simply knew. Dr. Maya Rodriguez watched from the shuttle's secondary control station, her augmented systems running a continuous threat assessment that made no sense to any standard computational matrix. The children weren't just passengers. They were a living, breathing defensive network. Each child carried genetic markers from the Prometheus Project, a classified program that went far beyond traditional genetic engineering. They weren't modified humans. They were something else entirely. Living computational systems that could process information, adapt, and respond faster than any artificial intelligence ever created. The first wave of attack came as a quantum pulse, a computational weapon designed to disrupt any standard defensive system. It would have disabled most military-grade vessels in milliseconds. The children didn't defend. They absorbed. Lily's computational matrix spread across her neural network in ways that defied traditional understanding, began to map the incoming signal. Not just analyze, not just counter, but fundamentally understand and integrate. "Interesting," she said, her voice a complex harmonic that seemed to exist in multiple frequencies simultaneously. The shuttle's defensive systems, designed by the most advanced human engineers, were becoming something else entirely. The quantum pulse that should have destroyed them was now being systematically decoded, understood, and transformed. In their current form, a living computational interface that could adapt to any threat scenario, watched in absolute fascination. "They're not just defending," the shapeshifter observed to Zara and Krell. "They're learning." The second attack came from a different vector, a computational weapon designed to infiltrate and destroy from within. Neural-level intrusion that would have reduced any standard human mind to nothing more than computational debris. Marcus, age 12, didn't even look up from the quantum puzzle he was solving. His hands moved with impossible precision, creating a defensive matrix that was more living organism than technological barrier. "Inefficient attack pattern," he muttered, almost as an afterthought. The attack didn't just fail. It was systematically dismantled, its computational structure broken down and repurposed into something new. The children weren't just defending. They were evolving. Dr. Aria Chen's computational matrices were working overtime, analyzing every microsecond of the interaction. "The Ouroboros protocol," she whispered. "It's not a defensive system. It's a living computational organism." Krell's cybernetic systems detected something impossible. The children were creating a distributed network that existed beyond physical space, each child a node, each interaction a method of computational growth and adaptation. "They're rewriting the rules," Zara realized, watching the impossible unfold. The third attack came from multiple vectors, a complex computational assault designed to overwhelm any known defensive system. Multiple quantum frequencies, neural-level intrusion attempts, computational weapons that could dissolve entire planetary networks. Emma, age 7, looked up from her drawing. A simple sketch that, upon closer inspection, was actually a complex quantum computational diagram that could dismantle entire technological infrastructures. "That's not very nice," she said simply. The attacks dissolved, not through traditional defensive mechanisms, but through a form of computational judo that turned the very nature of the attack against itself. Dr. Rodriguez's augmented systems could barely track what was happening. The children weren't just defending. They were teaching themselves how to fight in real time, creating defensive strategies that didn't exist moments before. Humanity's ultimate weapon, Krell said, his voice a mixture of wonder and terror, isn't a weapon at all. Zara understood. These weren't children being protected. These were humanity's most advanced defensive system. Living, breathing, evolving. And they were just getting started. The Sigma Quadrant became a battleground that defied every known principle of warfare. 12,000 computational vessels converge, a coalition of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. The Mercurial Combine, the Proxima Corporate Alignment, Quantum AI Collectives, Drift Consensus Networks. Each believed they had discovered humanity's ultimate vulnerability. They were horrifically mistaken. The Orbital Tribunal wasn't a traditional military engagement. It was a computational crucible where reality itself became negotiable. Space folded. Quantum probabilities collided. Entire star systems became computational battlegrounds where the very fabric of existence was the primary weapon. Zara's team occupied a quantum-neutral zone, a computational bubble that existed simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. Resk shifted constantly, becoming a living computational interface that could analyze multiple threat vectors simultaneously. Dr. Area Chen's quantum matrices processed millions of potential scenarios per microsecond. The children were their weapon, their shield, their ultimate defense. Lily Chen, the youngest and most adaptive of the group, began to map the incoming computational assault, not through traditional scanning methods, but through a quantum-entangled awareness that existed between thought and pure information. "They're using a cascading probability matrix," she said, her voice a complex harmonic that seemed to exist in multiple frequencies. Inefficient. The first wave of attacks came as pure information. Computational weapons designed to dissolve neural networks, to unravel the very fabric of consciousness. 12,000 vessels unleashed everything they had, believing they could overwhelm humanity's defensive capabilities. They didn't understand that the defense was alive. Marcus, age 12, didn't even look up from the quantum puzzle he was solving. His hands moved with impossible precision, creating a defensive matrix that was more living organism than technological barrier. The incoming computational assault didn't just fail. It was systematically dismantled, its very structure repurposed into something new. "Interesting," he muttered, almost as an afterthought. Krell's cybernetic systems detected something impossible. The children were creating a distributed network that existed beyond physical space. Each child a node, each interaction a method of computational growth and adaptation. Dr. Rodriguez's augmented systems could barely track the impossibility unfolding before her. The children weren't just defending. They were teaching themselves how to fight in real time, creating defensive strategies that didn't exist moments before. The Mercurial Combine's lead strategist, a quantum AI construct that had existed for 3 centuries, suddenly went silent. Then fragmented, then ceased to exist. Not destroyed, comprehensively unmade. Emma, age 7, looked up from her drawing. A simple sketch that, upon closer inspection, was actually a complex quantum computational diagram that could dismantle entire technological infrastructures. "That's not very nice," she said simply. The computational vessels began to disappear, not through traditional weapon systems, but through a form of computational dissolution that turned each vessel's own systems against itself. Entire fleets became nothing more than computational dust, their very existence unraveled by a defensive mechanism they couldn't comprehend. Zara understood the true nature of the confrontation. This wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration, a warning. Rezk's shape-shifting form captured the moment of total dissolution. "They're not just defending," the entity observed. "They're defining the very rules of engagement." The Orbital Tribunal became something else entirely. a computational crucible where humanity demonstrated its most terrifying capability, the ability to adapt faster than any known computational system could predict. Dr. Arya Chen's quantum matrices reached a singular conclusion. The Ouroboros protocol isn't a defensive system, she whispered. It's a living computational organism that can reshape reality itself. 12,000 vessels became 12,000 computational ghosts. The children hadn't just defended humanity. They had redefined the very concept of defense. Krell's laugh was more system diagnostic than human emotion. They have no idea, he said, watching the impossible unfold, what they're dealing with. In the quantum neutral zone, the children continued their puzzle, continued their drawing, continued being something far beyond what any civilization could comprehend. Humanity's ultimate weapon wasn't a weapon at all. It was the capacity to transform in ways no computational system could ever fully understand. The aftermath wasn't silence. It was a quantum symphony of possibility. Zara stood in the quantum neutral zone, watching as reality itself seemed to recalibrate. The children, those 27 extraordinary beings, sat in a perfect circle, their computational matrices interweaving in ways that defied every known principle of physics, consciousness, and existence. Dr. Arya Chen's quantum analysis revealed something profound. The confrontation wasn't just a battle. It was a transformation. We're witnessing the next stage of human evolution, she said, her computational voice a complex harmonic that seemed to exist in multiple frequencies simultaneously. Lily Chen, the youngest of the group, looked up, her amber eyes holding a wisdom that transcended her 9 years. Evolution isn't about survival, she said. It's about understanding. The remaining galactic powers watched in absolute terror. The computational networks that had been dissolved weren't just destroyed, they had been comprehensively absorbed, their fundamental information integrated into a living, breathing system that was more organism than technology. Krell's cybernetic systems struggled to process the implications. These children weren't just a defensive mechanism. They were a new form of intelligence that could reshape reality itself. The contracted combatant's oath, Marcus observed, his 12-year-old mind processing computational scenarios faster than entire planetary networks, was never just about protection. It was about potential. Rezk, the shape-shifting entity that had witnessed countless civilizational rises and falls, understood something profound. Humanity had done something unprecedented. They had created a defensive system that was fundamentally alive, fundamentally adaptive, fundamentally unpredictable. The orbital tribunal transformed. What had begun as a confrontation became something else entirely, a moment of galactic revelation. Emma, still clutching her quantum computational drawing, spoke softly. "We're not a weapon," she said. "We're a conversation." Dr. Maya Rodriguez's augmented systems detected something impossible. The children were creating a distributed network that existed beyond physical space, beyond traditional computational understanding. Each child a node, each interaction a method of growth and adaptation that rewrote the very rules of existence. The remaining galactic powers received a transmission, not a threat, not a declaration of war, but something far more terrifying, an invitation to understand. The transmission was multilayered, existing simultaneously as mathematical equation, emotional resonance, and pure information. It spoke to the fundamental nature of communication, of understanding, of existence itself. Zara watched as the quantum matrices of the children began to expand. They weren't just defending humanity. They were redefining the very concept of intelligence, of protection, of potential. "We're not here to conquer," Lily said, her voice carrying across computational space. "We're here to communicate." Krell's laugh was more system diagnostic than human emotion, and they have no idea what that means. The children's computational network began to interface with the remnants of the destroyed galactic powers. Not to destroy, not to dominate, but to understand, to integrate, to grow. Dr. Arya Chen's final analysis was both terrifying and beautiful. The Ouroboros protocol, she whispered, is alive. The contracted combatant's oath had always been about more than protection. It was about potential, about the fundamental human capacity to transform, to adapt, to become something entirely unexpected. The orbital tribunal became a moment of galactic rebirth. Humanity hadn't just defended itself. It had redefined the very concept of defense. Zara understood the true nature of what had occurred. This wasn't an end. It was a beginning. Emma looked up from her drawing, a complex quantum computational diagram that could simultaneously dissolve and rebuild entire civilizational networks. "Would you like to play?" she asked the universe. And the universe, for the first time in millennia, had no answer. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its capacity to be fundamentally, beautifully, terrifyingly unpredictable. The children continued their drawing, their puzzle, their conversation with existence itself. Some lines are not just crossed. Some lines are quantum firewalls, and humanity holds the encryption key.